it's very hard to say on any kind of objective scale what you really mean by what it is you're trying to put in place. And so, or the scores that you're trying to put in place. Like I do scoring for the comics that I review. What do those scores mean? And I've told people time and again that one of the things that a score means in my scoring system is that if you get a 6 or above, what that generally means is you've crossed the threshold by which I want to see another issue. You know, I'm curious enough, at least at the bare bones level, to see the next issue you put out. That's what a 6 or above means. And below a 6 means that, you know, you may have almost gotten there and you may have all of the technical stuff, but whatever it is about your comic didn't appeal to me to the point where I really, really wanted to get to the next level. And then, you know, I've made exceptions for that, of course, especially when asked to. Point of clarification, I am not saying that I will adjust anyone's score based on whether they ask. What I am saying is that I will read the next installment of whatever it is that they have, even if it falls below the normal threshold for my interest, which is the 6.0 threshold. If they ask, I may go ahead and read that second issue to see if the person's improved any. Or, as in a case that's coming up later this year or next, if somebody has done a couple of things already that haven't quite impressed me, but the third one is going to take characters from something he's done elsewhere and bring them into that universe, then, you know, well, that's piqued my interest, so I'll go ahead and take a look at that. But I'm not saying that I will jiggle my scores around for anybody who asks. I will possibly take a second look at their stuff if you ask. That's all I'm saying there, and I thought I should go ahead and throw that in just in case I got taken out of context. But at the same time, it's like I make that first division. And that's something that I hope that comes through in the reviews that I'm doing, because and I know that's kind of hard to see, because how do you make people see that other than just come right out and explain that to them? Because nobody's going to look at a 10-point scale and they're going to say, well, you know, obviously 6 is the dividing line here between what he wants to see more of and what he doesn't. I have to literally come out and say that. And then it's a matter of, okay, within that area of, okay, 6 and below and 6 and above, where does your comic fit in compared to all the others in that range? So I'm probably going to wind up with kind of a cluster of titles that are all going like around the between 6 and 7 and between, you know, 4 and 5.5 is generally where a lot of the comics I read are going to go. And then the ones that are the more extreme outliers will go towards, you know, further towards the ends of the scale. I guess probably if I was thinking about it more at the time, I probably would have reset my baseline so that was like 5, you know, and be like anything 6 and above. Well, I mean, it kind of gets to there anyway. Although maybe 5.5 would have been the low end, which I know would make you happy, Andrew, because one of yours hit on 5.5. So I'm so Shane Davis on one of his live streams, he was reading off one of my super chats, and we saw my name. He was like, "Oh, you know, I saw that you scored my book lower than ISOM #1. You know, you scored Inglorious Rex #1 lower than ISOM #1, which I did. I put Inglorious Rex at a 5, I think, and ISOM #1 at a 6. And he just basically said, "I respect your opinion." Now, of course, Shane being Shane, I don't know if that's a you know, shot across the bow, if he's being sarcastic, if he really means that. It could be any one of those. But one of the things that I don't know whether he knows is that I make that kind of separation where I'm saying, okay, like 6 and above is like where I want to see more, and then 5 and above or below 6 is where I'm kind of like, okay, it might have been good, but it was not good enough to pique my interest towards another issue. And in Inglorious Rex's case, then you have to kind of ask yourself the question, well, what would it have taken for me to get across that threshold? And in that particular book's case, I think the answers would have been something more to the effect of having a better theme, for one thing, having some more depth of character, maybe some slight art improvements where I didn't feel like I was either watching things from way out, far out, or way too close in. A little more balance in the kind of artistic depiction there. Maybe a little more world building up front. There's all sorts of things that can contribute to that, where it's just that particular configuration of factors doesn't sit well with me, and it causes me to judge the book more harshly than I would a book like ISOM #1, where not only does it have its problems, but it at least has the core that makes me want to see where it goes from that point. And the other thing is, I just had it on the tip of my tongue. I was right about to say something that I wanted to be sure I got across, and now I'm forgetting what it is. Experience level as well. Say what you will about ISOM #1, it is the first book of somebody who has never written a comic book before, and who has never been around comic books or comic book writing, comic book writers, comic book artists, to the extent that these other creators in the Comicsgate space have. Ethan Van Sciver has been, right there with Geoff Johns, right there with Gail. Well, not so much there with Gail Simone, because he kind of was detached from that. He's been toe to toe with writers, bouncing ideas off of them and being able to work with them and figuring out how it is they do what they do. And so when he brings his experience and knowledge to his own comic books, I realize that there's not always as far up to go. And that if he's bringing his A game, then, how far is he going to go up? How far is Shane Davis going to go up, given that they've been bringing what they say is their A game to both the writing and the artwork? Because like Ethan says, there's always that chance that you hit a talent wall, and you're not going to grow beyond that, or at least you start from a particular base, and you're going to go so high as far as your effort goes, and but you might not attain to somebody who is like primarily a writer and that is what they do. Now, I mean, there are some artists who have conquered that easily. I mean, obviously, John Byrne would be a good example of one. You've got George Perez as another. I mean, these are writer artists who have transcended in both the writing and the artistic fields. But that doesn't mean everybody's going to get there. And so when I look at Eric July and I realize that his level of experience is like so far down, that I realize that he's got a lot of room to grow. And the more he hobnobs with other creators, the more he has the potential to do better in his writing. Whereas you've got Shane Davis, you've got Ethan Van Sciver, you've got John Malin. These are people who have hung out with artists or with other artists and writers and writer artists, etc., and have been in that space for so long that, if they haven't absorbed it by now, how much are they going to absorb in the future? And so that's why I may be more sour on Inglorious Rex than I would be on ISOM #1, is because I know that Inglorious Rex, how much further up do you have to go? And I've read Inglorious Rex #2 because that was the campaign I purchased on, and I will be getting Inglorious Rex #3 just because Inglorious Rex #2 does not give you the end of the story, and I want to see the whole story. But I already feel like it's not going anywhere in terms of the quality. Inglorious Rex 2 and 3. I mean, unless 3 just pulls up rabbit out of its ass, I'm I'm a kaiju rabbit out of its ass. I can't imagine that I'm going to be giving 2 and 3 that good of a grade. So, that. Whereas with Eric July, I thought there was potential at least to see something good in ISOM number 2, and so my interest was still piqued to that point. And then ISOM number 2 came out, and it was a freaking disaster. And now I don't have much hope for ISOM number 3 at all, although I have to get it.